Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guest here today, well, first of all, you should recognize our guest. We have Shannon back on the podcast. We were talking a little bit before we started recording, and it's been a little bit over a year since we last had her on, and she has made some big changes to her life, and we're going to talk to her a little bit about that. But first of all, Shannon, I got to ask, what's the weather like where you're at right now?
It is currently 23 degrees, and we have about it's all slushy now. We had about a foot of snow yesterday, so yeah.
Okay, this is the first time that I've ever had a guest on that has crappier weather than me. So, again, like we have first for everything on this podcast. It's like 40 degrees now, but we did have some snow a few days ago. But yeah, the weather's getting good for this week. But yeah, so again, everyone, like I said, we have first for everything. But Shannon, you have made such a big adjustment to your life since we last talked. Why don't you get into it? First of all, for anyone out there who doesn't realize, what has happened to you over this past year?
So since I have been on since last year, I have had a child. She is currently 5 months old. So 5 months ago, I had a baby, and so took time off from competing and the bodybuilding stage because I was pregnant, and so yeah, now I'm back, and 5 months later, here I am. So
5 months postpartum and she looks like that, and I'm like, okay, she needs to be everyone's trainer then. It's like, are you kidding me? That's just absolutely ridiculous. But what was that process like, finding out that you were pregnant, and how did that how long did it take for you to sort of figure out how you were going to be able to sort of maintain somewhat of a shape throughout this pregnancy? Because some people just completely don't exercise at all. Some people like to mix things up and still maintain a healthy and active lifestyle. How long did that take you to make that decision of like, oh, hey, I still want to be able to have a somewhat of shape while I'm pregnant?
Well, so my husband and I already had talked about possibly the possibility of having kids and how it was going to affect my bodybuilding career when we went down that road. And actually, I couldn't tell you when I was on the podcast last time, but I had just found out I was pregnant like 2 days before, because that was, but I was really early. I think I was like 4 weeks pregnant at the time. So I was actually pregnant on my last podcast with you, but it was a secret. So once I found out I was pregnant, everything was healthy, talked to my doctor and just told her, listen, this is what I do. I'm a bodybuilder. I want to make sure that I have a healthy pregnancy, but I also want to make sure that I'm able to train as much as possible. Now, I say this because every person is different, but because I have been training for so long, my doctor actually told me, continue how you're training, be careful with the weight. And they did put a restriction on my squats and my deadlifts, but do not stop training because my body's so acclimated to that. So that's basically what I did my entire pregnancy. I just lifted safely. And then I listened to my body. That's the most crucial thing, is I know when us competitors are in our off seasons, or we're not pregnant and we're training, and rest days are crucial, but we don't always take them. When you're pregnant, I took so many rest days, and it really did help with my recovery, and it just helped keep my body healthy. And so that's basically what I did. So I did train my entire pregnancy, all the way up until probably like 2 days before I gave birth.
That's so awesome, because yeah, there's so many different philosophies on what you should do when you're pregnant, like the amount of training. But I've heard sort of similar along like your lines, where if your body's been so acclimated to it, then just stick with it, because obviously, like if you're just an average person that all of a sudden wants to get like really into shape, don't do it when you're pregnant. But yeah, it really, I mean, it varies from person to person. But were you starting to get fatigued early on in the pregnancy, or did it wait until later when you started to take more rest days, or was it sort of you just did it for the whole pregnancy?
I didn't notice the fatigue as much until the second trimester. So that was about 13 weeks into my pregnancies when the second trimester starts. I did notice very early on, though, I had very severe morning sickness. I actually dropped probably a good 12 to 13 pounds my first trimester because I was so sick. It's really funny is I always tell people my first trimester, I pretty much was vegetarian. I did not like meat. Meat made me nauseous. So I actually did not eat meat for the first about 12 weeks of my pregnancy, just because anytime I ate it, it made me want to throw up. So yeah.
Okay, that's one of the first times that we've ever heard someone actually lose that much weight for their first trimester. We've had some people come on. Yeah, hey, I mean, that's more power to it. But yeah, it's just so fascinating, the changes that the body goes through. But did you find that you were still able to maintain a very good shape, or did you find that, what areas would you think that you still maintain the most during pregnancy?
Um, Definitely my upper body was the easiest to train. That was just because it didn't really have any, I could sit down and I could curl and everything like that. I did train with my trainer my entire pregnancy and excuse me, and he's not, I don't think that most people are not, in the situation where like, hey, here's my top bodybuilder and now she's pregnant. How do I train her? So, we kind of had a plan picked out. I trained with him consistently every Sunday, did legs with him or upper body, however I was feeling. And we just kind of went with it. The biggest muscle loss that I noticed was my legs. And that's just normal. Once I get into the third trimester, when your stomach gets to a certain size, it's too hard to squat. Your belly's in the way. So I did notice that was the huge drawback for me. Is my legs definitely took a huge beating with size wise as after I came off this pregnancy.
So the big elephant in the room is abs. Did you train abs at all during your pregnancy?
So I really didn't. And what's funny is I started doing planks like probably my second trimester. And my husband was almost like, Shannon, you can't be doing planks. And I go, why? And he's like, and he pulled up this article, like when you do planks, it's actually not beneficial for the child. You're creating stress on the baby. So I really avoided abs at all costs after like he brought that article to my attention. I was like, oh gosh. So yeah, no, I really didn't train abs at all my entire pregnancy.
I was gonna say, I was like, I've always been fascinated by that because it's like I wonder what that does to the kid if you're training abs at all. But how late after you delivered? How long until you were finally back in the gym?
Um, like I want to say it was like 3 days.
Wow.
Yeah. That is not now people who've listened to this, I'm just going to tell you that is not recommended at all. That my doctor did not even recommend that. I'm one of those people though that I cannot sit still. And even when I did start back at the gym, I was walking on the treadmill and I was doing like seated, like, arm curls. I was doing everything that's really did not put any pressure on my lower part of the body. Again, that was against my doctor's advice that I do not recommend that for anybody. But I did.
Yeah, I mean, I can guarantee there's gonna be a couple women on here just being like, "Oh my god, I could never do that. That's just absolutely insane." But yeah, that's again, that just to the dedication that I mean, this sport requires. But how has your life changed? Not just in bodybuilding now, being a mom. I mean, your time management skills. I always like to say for all the moms that I have on. I mean, especially in this young stage of life. I mean, the time management skills. Your life revolves around your kid. How has that changed your bodybuilding lifestyle? Along with the fact that you are going to have major time management renovations basically in your life.
So, and new parents know sleep was the major number one loss. Oh gosh, I still miss it so much. Sleep was just the one thing I had to get acclimated with my body. I had to be like, oh gosh, okay, you're just not going to get sleep. For the first 2 months of my pregnancy too, I breastfed. So, my husband can't feed the baby if I'm breastfeeding. So that was definitely, and I posted about this earlier. Breastfeeding was a huge stressor for me, and we can talk detail about that later. But I think the biggest thing is before I was pregnant, I would train with my husband all the time at the gym. And now that we have a child, we don't do daycare right now. We think she's too young. So we just take turns watching her. So I'm training by myself right now. And I think that's the biggest setback with my goals and my training is I'm not able to train the way I used to because I don't have my husband there. If I want to lift heavier, if I want to spot. So I think that was just kind of the biggest thing, getting situated and then, being able to do our things that we normally do. It's just, we're still learning. I mean, been 5 months, but as babies grow up, their schedules change and then we have to, adjust to that routine too.
So one thing that I'm always really fascinated by is how couples name their kids. Now, I'll give you, I've never said this on the podcast, how my name came to be, but so my family is a huge baseball family. So my older brother's name is Nolan and my name is Ryan. So we named him after Nolan Ryan, the baseball pitcher. And then my little brother's name is Mitchell, but my dad wanted to name him Cal, but then my mom said, okay, that's enough. I've already done enough baseball names for you. But how did you come up with your daughter's name? Is there a story behind that?
So when we found out we were having a girl, my husband was just over the moon that we were having a little girl. So, we kept going back and forth with names. And, one of the big things is people tell you is don't tell people your name because they're so judgmental. And my best friend and my mom both work in the school district. So that was like a nightmare because like, no, that reminds me of this kid or that kid. So any names that we were kind of talking about, somebody had an opinion. So one day my husband calls me and he's sitting in traffic. He's like, I really like the name Adley. And I'm like, okay. And that was it. That there's no huge story. He was just sitting and he was brainstorming when he was in traffic, and that's how it came to be. And it stuck. And her name's Adley, and that's how it is.
Hey, those are some of the best stories. I love those stories where it's just, happens. It just happenstance, yeah, just sitting in traffic and said, hey, Adley's a great name. Hey, that's a good story to tell when she's old enough. And she's like, how'd you come up with my name? Well, your dad was just sitting in traffic and he thought of it and he gave me a call and I said, hey, that sounds fine to me. So yeah, I'm always fascinated by those backstories on that. But I mean, you touch base on it perfectly, but I love to just touch base on it a little bit more is sleep because, that is the number one with bodybuilding. I mean, with recovery, that is the most important thing. I mean, I think we talked about this on the first podcast, but you have a lot more experience with sleep deprivation now than you did probably on the last one. But how are you still able to, go to the gym? Because, I know that you guys already have like an insane amount of motivation and dedication to the sport, but even me, like I'm one of those people where if I get 4 hours of sleep, I'm not going to a gym. Like I just can't. Like I always tell, one of my experiences in college, I had pulled an all-nighter and then I went to the gym that morning after. That was the worst experience I've ever had in my entire life with anything involving weights. I lasted about 20 minutes and I was like, okay, I'm done. Like I gotta go. I'm too tired. But how do you find that motivation to go to the gym after, you've been so sleep deprived for such a long time? And are there any tips and tricks that you like to maybe tell for for expecting moms that might be listening to this on how they can be better prepared for the sleep loss that they're going to get?
So everyone says, oh, sleep when your baby sleeps. Yeah, that doesn't happen. We all know that doesn't happen because there's a million different things. What's great is, so my husband is super helpful. We both were just great co-parenters together because I work full time as well. And he goes to school full time. We have separate schedules. So what we do is the days that he gets up early for school, I'm home in the morning with with my daughter. So I take care of all the night feedings and I stay up with her and do that so he can sleep in, he gets his full rest, and then he can go to school. And then vice versa. When I have to get up early for work, then he takes the night feedings. And we have that kind of set in a good schedule. So at least we're getting a decent, I would say 6 hours of sleep right now, 6 to 7. So it's definitely helped from coming from 3 to 4 broken hours to 6. Our bodies definitely have been used to it now. And, if I can squeeze a nap in here or there, I do, but that's not really happen a lot.
Are you just like a caffeine machine now?
Yeah.
Yep. I used to work nights, so yeah, those 5-hour energies, become your best friend, and it's a never-ending struggle of just getting caffeinated. But hey, the positive thing is that once your daughter reaches about 2 or 3, you can start using her basically as a weight for your workout, so you can get some workouts done at home. Yeah, so you always got to find the positives in everything. But did you expect that you would be seeing these type of results that you're seeing right now just 5 months postpartum? Was there a goal like I want to look a certain way this amount after I've had my kid?
So my number one, and I think we discussed this last podcast, is I had bulimia nervosa before my bodybuilding, and I had really bad body dysmorphia. So I always wanted to be a parent, but I was also super scared about how my body was going to respond. So I was already, as I was watching my body change, like I was super self-conscious if I was going to get stretch marks. Like I did the cocoa butter, I did the oil, I did the coconut oil, I did everything possible to just kind of help my body try to recover faster. So when I kind of got ready and it was like the last month of pregnancy, I started actually watching when I was eating again. I got back onto my like off-season nutrition plan. So I already started that while I was in my last trimester, with the okay from my doctor, because they said after 36 weeks, the baby's already developed this, so it has the nutrients it needs, so you can, proceed how you want. So I did that, and I had to be careful but obviously I was breastfed the first 2 months, so there was no supplements involved because anything that I ate would go through my milk and my baby would get it. So, other than that, what I did is I researched breastfeeding helps drop the weight. And then I just started with some pretty intense cardio, almost like I was in a prep, basically like a bodybuilding prep. I did fasted cardio when I would get up to feed her, put her back down, do fasted, watch what I was eating. And it just, once you get in that routine again, it was just like I was back on a prep season and I got in the grind of it. And then that's how it happened.
How would you compare your pregnancy cravings to your bodybuilding cravings that you might get during prep?
Honestly, I think prep cravings are 10 times worse than pregnancy cravings. I really didn't crave a ton. Like I said, my first trimester, I was really sick. The second trimester, I just really wanted like what did I always I always crave cheese bread. I love cheese bread and raspberries. Like that was like my cravings was like fruit and like a lot of cheese. And I don't eat fruit typically ever. So like having just those were just good, like, I don't know, treats for me.
God, you're boring. Jeez. Just all these, like I've had some, yeah, no, and that's awesome because yeah, I've had some where, you know, we hear these stories of women that, you know, they gain like, you know, like 50, 60 pounds for their pregnancy because yeah, you know, if you're going to Dairy Queen, you know, 2 or 3 times a week just because you get that craving. But yeah, I think it just goes to, you know, how having, you know, that strict bodybuilding lifestyle ahead of time really helps out when you're pregnant. It also, I mean, it really drastically helps out with especially the recovery part as well. But I mean, having a kid, how's that also changed your perspective on things when it comes to, you know, your bodybuilding lifestyle, when it comes to your overall life? How has it changed things for you?
Um, well, like we discussed, the time management is a huge thing, and then just we're caring for a little human now. So it's like everything, like even like if we're on our phones or like she observes everything. She's at that stage around where she's so observant, and you know, she's picking up on, you know, behavior. So it's like you are somebody's, you know, somebody's learning from you, and so that's like the biggest thing that my husband and I have, you know, discussed is like, you know, we have to watch what we do. And you know, the biggest question I get asked all the time is, "Oh, is your daughter going to grow up and eat like you?" No. So I'm not going to force my child, and my child is going to have a wholesome diet. Like I'm not going to force like her to do a bodybuilding. That's my husband and my lifestyle, but I don't, if my daughter wants a bodybuild, that's fine, but I'm not going to force her into it. And she's not going to be doing the chicken and rice diet like my husband and I are. No, she's going to have her milk and her cheeses and everything that she needs to grow and develop into, you know, a healthy human.
I was gonna say anyone who's seen Shannon and her husband, they're gonna say, "Wow, that kid's gonna be jacked." And that kid's got the genetic jackpot basically set up. So yeah, and I mean, I love to talk to, you know, especially moms about, you know, how they plan to, and it's great that you're gonna give her those options because, you know, we have it's like half and half with some of the guests that I have on. Half of them, you know, they want them to not necessarily become a bodybuilder, but they just want them to instill that lifestyle into them, you know, eating healthy and stuff. But other ones are just like, hey, let them make those mistakes, and, you know, just realize, you know, hey, you know, and if you always can, you know, you can kind of like leave a trail of breadcrumbs, like right back and say, you know, hey, you know, just do that. But yeah, you don't have to be so forceful about it. But when it comes to also the nutritional aspect, what was the biggest nutritional change that you had to make from pregnancy, and then has it been easy to get rid of that since you've gotten off it?
Um, so the biggest nutritional change, well, nobody tells you, this was the biggest thing is when I was breastfeeding, nobody tells you how much you have to eat to produce milk. And that was the biggest nutritional change from having the baby, then breastfeeding is you have to eat like a minimum of like 2,500 to 3,000 calories a day just to produce the milk because your body's burning so many calories producing that milk. So that was, and I wrote a blog about this when I came off of breastfeeding because it was so hard for me to eat that amount of food mentally for me. And then because she's a preemie, she was double eating the amount of normal babies would. So I was not even producing enough milk. And that was a huge, huge thing. So once I got done with the whole breastfeeding aspect and was like, you know what, it's stressing me out too much. I'm going to just formula feed her and I'm going to go and focus on my mental health. And then I got back onto my normal diet, like that have been eating for years where, you know, my coach gives me my shakes and all that stuff. And that's literally what I went right back on. And I think because my body's so used to that, that was one of the huge takeaways. And people are like, well, there's no possible way that you bounce back that fast. It is if you're consistent. For the first 3 months, I didn't even have a cheat meal. Like I was so dedicated to just doing cardio and dropping this weight and getting back into a good, healthy routine where I was happy with the self. Because when you don't feel happy with how you look, it just ruins everything else. So once I was like, okay, I got my body back, my daughter's healthy, my husband's happy, let's keep going. And so then I got my cheat meals back on, and now I'm back to a normal, good routine.
3 months without a cheat meal. Good God, that's just. I mean, I had a cheat meal last night, and I'm still feeling a little bad about it. But like, geez, that is really really impressive. But how were you able to deal with the mental aspect? Because I mean, we talked about it like this on the last podcast, where I mean, after a show, you are going to have to put on weight, because you can't maintain that look 24/7. But I mean, when you're pregnant, you're going to have to put on some weight too. What was that adjustment like mentally? Was it easier for you to just, convince yourself that like, hey, this is for the greater good because I'm going to have a kid. And, obviously, I can't be leaned down when I'm having a baby. what was that mentally like for you though, to adjust to the fact that, like, hey, I am gonna not necessarily have to start out from scratch after I have the kid, but it is going to be maybe even a little bit harder than going into an off season.
Right. So, well, when you're pregnant, you go to the checkups and you get your weight checked. And like I said, my first trimester, I dropped a ton of weight. So my doctor actually put pressure on me. She's like, listen, if you don't eat more, she's like, we're going to have to start putting you on like some special diet because you're not gaining enough weight. And so that was a huge eye opener for me. So that's why I really, found foods that didn't make me sick and just went for it. And I still kept my weight in check because I did a ton of research during pregnancy, what foods are beneficial, what vitamins I can take, talk to my doctor, all that stuff. So I gained a total of, I think the last day of my pregnancy before I gave birth, I was 20 pounds heavier than my normal weight. So I put on a total of 20 pounds, which is not a ton. I know for, I have some women that are like, oh, I put on 80, 100. I put on a total of 20 pounds. And that was because I kept my weight though in check because I knew that the more weight I gained during pregnancy, the more I would have to lose off pregnancy. Now here's the thing though, that I don't tell people this a lot, but one of my off seasons, before I started working with my coach, I was 205 pounds for my off season. Currently I'm 170 pounds. That's my off season. 205 is very big for me. And so when I didn't even hit that off season weight, when I was pregnant, like my pregnancy weight did not match my off season weight. I was like, okay, I got this. Cause I've been lighter or I've been heavier than I was pregnant. And so that made me mentally a little bit better because I was like, okay, I've been heavier than this.
Just to give a little reference, I'm 210 pounds, but I'm also 6'3", everyone. So that's just showing you, the weight aspect. I mean, it's just, it's like we've been talking about. I mean, with our last podcast, this lifestyle is such a mental journey, so much more than a physical journey. I mean, the body can do so many things that if you just tell it to do it, but with the mental aspect, it's all about just convincing yourself about, just that journey. But do you have any plans on when you're thinking about maybe competing next?
So I'm actually in off season right now. I have an off season that I'm following. I will be back on stage April of next year, and then I will start competing in national shows in May of next year. So Junior USA will be my first national show, and then we will plan from there. So I will be early next year. I will be stepping on stage.
So is there a time frame in place when you plan on going on to your prep?
I have this is the leanest I've been in my off season. So my prep probably will not start officially until the end of January, just because of how lean I am right now. We'll see how after the holidays go, because sometimes I get a little crazy for the holidays. So
leading me perfectly into my next question, because I don't think we talked about this last time, is, we are super close to Thanksgiving. We're about, almost 2 weeks away from it, or no, actually a week away from it. Yeah. But it's gonna be coming up fast, and then you have Christmas. What are your plans like for the food aspect when this? Because I mean, like you said, you are in your off season, but I mean, we know you've already told us about how restrictive your eating gets, but how do you plan on getting through the holidays, especially with a kid too, where I mean, you're gonna have so many people asking, it's just that whole fiasco. I can't even imagine what that's gonna be like.
So my off season diet right now, I have 2 cheat meals a week. So typically, like the week of the holidays, I'll update with my coach, and then he'll be like, all right, what's your schedule like for the week? What's the plans for the family? And then we just go from there. So if I just know I have one family, function that week, all right, that's going to be your cheat meal. You're good. If there's a couple of them, we just kind of space it out. Everything, as long as it is planned ahead of time, it's not overwhelming. And then I'm still able to hit my goals. And for the holidays too, is I'm one of those firm believers, like I believe in balance, but also family. So like, I will never prep during the holidays for Thanksgiving and Christmas. I don't care the other holidays, but those ones are so important for my family. So if I want to enjoy myself, I'm not going to beat myself up. And that took a long time for me to realize that. But now, especially having a family, I don't want to miss out on the little moments. Oh, mom didn't have a piece of pie because she didn't want to get fat. Like, no. So, I will still watch what I eat, and we still have a plan, but I'm not going to beat myself up if I want to eat like 7 servings of something. It's at the holidays.
Other than turkey, because it's a cop-out answer, what is your go-to Thanksgiving meal?
Green bean casserole is my favorite food. My mom has to make a separate tray for my husband and I. It's my favorite food. I literally will just eat that, the entire tray.
That sounds great. For me, I'm just a sucker for pumpkin pie. Anytime there's pumpkin pie in the room, I'm golfing that thing down. Or we also have a thing where we make Jell-O too. I'm even great. You know, I knew that this was gonna be a tough podcast to do because I was gonna start drooling because we're talking about Thanksgiving foods. But you know, yeah, it's just, yeah, I can't. I cannot wait for that. But also, you know, as I don't know if we talked about this actually on the last podcast either. I mean, we both live in cold climates, and you know, just going to the gym and getting that motivation can be so hard, especially when it's, you know, 23 degrees outside, especially in November. But I mean, here when it gets to be like, you know, in the negative tens, you know, for a couple of days in January, like it always happens, you know, you're not going to find me, you know, I'll be curled up by the fire, you know, with a thing of hot chocolate. But how do you find that motivation to go to the gym when it's really cold and basically your body is just telling yourself, you know, hey, let's just stay inside and just be warm?
Well, well, first of all, my job is I'm a full-time personal trainer. So
Well,
I'm always at
I
the
guess
gym.
that helps. I guess that helps. Yeah.
So it does. So even if I'm like, oh, I don't want to work out, well, and typically I don't work out at the gym that I work at, but there are times where I'm like, okay, I don't feel like going to my gym, so I'll just work out at work. The other downfall is by my house, like I live right across the street from my home gym. I can literally walk there. So even if like it's a crappy day out, like I mean, it's not even a half mile. It's probably like I don't know, like 27 steps, and my gym's right there. So I'm pretty. I like wake up and I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym, and you just see the sign. I'm like, oh, I probably should just go to the gym.
Well, I'm lucky too because my apartment has a gym like right down below. So literally, I have no excuse during the winter where I'm just like, oh, I don't want to walk down 2 flights of stairs to go to the gym. So that really does help as well. But I mean, just from looking at some of your photos when you were pregnant, I mean, you still looked like you were in a great amount of shape. What was that? What was that like getting those looks from people seeing basically like a jacked pregnant woman walking down the street? Because I mean, you get enough looks being a bodybuilder, but then being pregnant too. What was that experience like?
You know, I really, and I was I covered up a lot when I was pregnant because of how the minute that announced I was pregnant, I was getting questions like, oh, are you gonna train? You know, that's bad for the baby. I even like talked to my coach because he usually posts all of his workouts on his Instagram page. And I said, listen, I was like, just for the benefit of your sanity and my sanity, let's not post any of my workout videos. I'm pregnant. I was like, we know what's good for me, but I was like, I don't want people to be like, oh, she's going to kill her baby. I don't want any of the negative stuff. So we kind of kept it really under wraps. And I got a lot of requests too from women like, oh, post your workout videos. And I didn't want to go down that road because there was just so, you know, with social media, and we talked about this last time, especially being a female in the industry, there's already so much criticism coming, and I just didn't want to throw that on top of it and make me feel ashamed for being pregnant and still going and trying to better my health. So I still trained smart, and I was at the gym. Most of the people knew I was pregnant, so there wasn't any hardships. And then when I was pregnant walking around, I was pregnant mostly wintertime anyway. Yeah, because I was in my second trimester in November, December. So everything was pretty much covered up. So luckily for me is I didn't have like the huge like, oh, it's a pregnant bodybuilder. So
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, you lucked out with that then, yeah, going through the winter then, because yeah, like I said, you know, this is weather right now where I mean, I mean, it's always a mystery, you know, going to bars and like talking to people, it's always a mystery, like, oh, what's underneath there? You never know because everyone's so covered up mostly, but yeah, I mean, just that journey. I mean, being pregnant is a tough enough thing in and of itself, but with the whole bodybuilding thing, I mean, that must have just been just an incredible journey. And how has this also changed your outlook on you know, everything else? I mean, being the fact that, you know, you have gone through something that's very hard for a lot of people in pregnancy, and you've also gone through, you know, bodybuilding prep, which is also, you know, very hard. Does it really convince you that, you know, if you set your mind to anything, you can accomplish it?
oh, absolutely. I am one of those people, and even my clients tell me that I'm kind of a rough trainer to work with because I actually, before somebody wants to work with me, I make them do like a consult with me and see if they can handle the workouts and see if they have the mental capacity to handle them. And if they don't, I say, you know, unfortunately, we're not a good fit. And some people say, well, that's really rough. Like, you know, and I'm like, no, I was like, if you have a goal, I like to work with like-minded people. So people who have the same mindsets, the same, you know, if they want a goal, they're not going to make excuses. And so that's kind of how it works. So I always tell people like it is possible. And I have moms like, oh, I can never get back in shape. Yeah, you can. You just have to find time. Like there is 24 hours in a day. All right. So maybe at the end of the day, you're sitting at home for an hour of downtime watching TV with your family. As much as you want to, you could go to the gym, or like my husband and I, we have spin bikes in front of our TV. So if I want to hit cardio and I want to spend time with the family, I just jump on the spin bike, talk to my husband, and watch TV at the same time. There are ways around things. There's at-home workouts. I mean, there's times where I couldn't get to the gym because my sitter's not here, my husband couldn't watch her. I have at-home workouts that I do. It's you find ways.
It's just about, it's always about, figuring out what works best and, how you can accommodate with things. But a few questions before we wrap things up. So if we were to talk to you a year from today, where would you like to be at well, we already did talk a year from today, but if we were to talk to you another year from today, where would you like to be at in, your bodybuilding? Where would you like to be at in just your overall life? What are some goals that you would have liked to have achieved if we were to talk again a year from today?
Well, I'm hoping that from a year from now when we talk, that I'm going to finally be pro. It's been a long time coming. So let's hope that this upcoming year I go pro. So that's my bodybuilding goal. And I know that the biggest thing is people keep asking me because from post-pregnancy to currently, I have put on 20 pounds of muscle. I have put on a significant amount of size. And so people keep saying, are you doing bodybuilding? No, I'm going to still stay in women's physique. My physique is still considered a women's physique competitor's body. So I'm going to stay in that and try to go pro there. And then overall career wise, just keep focusing on building my clientele up, building up, my name, and just really hoping that I can make a name for myself in this industry. I'm still young enough that I have some time. And we'll go from there. My husband keeps talking about other kids. I think we're going to hold off for kids for a little bit while I would love another kid eventually, but I want to go for this goal of going pro first and get that out of the way and then focus on everything else.
Just try not to do what my parents did where they had a kid like every 3 years, because then what's going to happen is you're going to have a senior and then a freshman, and then you're going to have a senior and a freshman in high school. That doesn't really end well so much, having one that's a senior and one that's a freshman. That doesn't really, it doesn't work out so well. I could get into some stories with that, but no, I always like to kid about that. But I've always just found this fascinating. What was probably one myth about pregnancy that you believed that you found out to be wrong when it finally happened to you?
Well, the myth, I train a lot of moms. The demographic I train are a lot of moms. And everyone said your body will never be the same. You will always miss your post-pregnancy or your pre-pregnancy body. That's such a lie. Like I think I look better now than I was before I was pregnant, and my body bounced back. I put in the work. My waist is smaller. I'm leaner. I feel like, I don't know. So I don't believe that. That's what I don't believe.
No, and it really depends on the individual too, because I think a lot of people, they just give up sort of after they start having kids, and then they're just like, oh, I can just mess around a little bit. So yeah, I agree with that 100%. And again, we wish you nothing but the best of luck, and you're competing, and I'll have some photos pop up when we've been talking about just your journey back from having a kid, and it's so amazing what you've done in just the short amount of time that you've done it. I think it really just adds so much inspiration to people. And what would you say is probably the number one piece of advice that you'd like to give, especially either expecting moms or just recently moms that just became recently moms, on how they can get back into the shape of things?
You just have to understand, you have to take time for yourself. Your family and your friends are going to be willing to help, but your mental health is so important if you want to get back in physical health and physical shape. You have to make sure that you're taking time for yourself, even mentally. Even for the first month or two, I suffered from severe postpartum depression, and my husband was right by my side through it. And you really need to just make sure that your mental health is the most important thing after pregnancy, and make sure you take time for yourself. I know so many women are like, I don't have time. You do. You have time. You know that the grandparents are going to be there, the aunts, the uncles, everyone is willing to help. And you have to utilize your connections, because you need to make sure that you are keeping up with yourself.
Well, sort of going off of the postpartum depression-esque kind of thing, is that we talk to a lot of moms too that suffer from that mom guilt, where they don't want to be away from their kids because they feel wrong. Have you dealt with that at all? And and if you have, how did you sort of realize that, hey, it's for the betterment of myself, like you were talking about?
So my husband and I already had a discussion right before I gave birth to my daughter, because I am one of those people that cannot sit still and do not like to sit around. And I knew I was going to go stir crazy. So I actually did not take maternity leave. I gave birth to my daughter, and 2 days after I gave birth, I went back to work. I had the mom guilt set in. Was this the right thing? But so my husband had me take a week off and go back home and stay. And I was miserable. And he said, this is what you're supposed to do. He's like, I will stay at home. My husband's a stay-at-home dad. He's like, you go back to work. And it's just reassuring to know that I'm doing the right thing for myself because I tried both options. And for me to be a better mom, I need to be focused and I need to be career driven and then come home and I still, I'm still the best mom I can be when I'm at home. And we take plenty of family time. Like I don't work weekends, so we always spend the family time there. And I still watch my daughter 2 days a week in the morning. But it's just you just have to really take time. I just knew that if I would stay home, that postpartum was going to set in and I would have just been miserable.
Okay, I'm absolutely horrible when it comes to like knowing like what babies first are at like what point in their lives. But what have been some significant firsts that have happened to your daughter recently? Has she been, I don't know if no, I don't even know about talk. I'm not even going to embarrass myself by like trying to guess. But have there been any significant firsts that she's been making in the last few months?
Well, since she was a preemie, she was a little bit later of a developer, I think, but she is crawling backwards. She can't crawl forward yet, so she crawls backwards. She found her voice, but she cannot say words yet, but she can just babble random. And we started her on Whole Foods, which was the most exciting thing because we went off the formula and started her on baby food. So I think that was the most exciting thing. But she's going to be 6 months upcoming, and so this will be for her first Christmas. So we're kind of excited for that, even though she's a little young still. It's just first for everything for parents. And
Are you and your husband fighting over getting her to say your mom or dad for the first word?
no, I'm encouraging her to say dad first, just 'cause I know it's easier for children to say that. So I'm actually encouraging her. As long as she speaks, I'm happy. So
Wait, I've never heard that before. Is that like a thing where they say that it's easier for kids to say dad than mom?
yeah, my doctor even said that because the da instead of the ma is easier for kids to say. So typically dada is the first word that children say.
All right. Well, again, we learn something new from this podcast every single time. And, other than, having, I guess, that at a colder temperature. But, I mean, again, Shannon, we cannot thank you enough for coming back on the podcast. I really, really appreciate it. And we wish you nothing but the best of luck. And honestly, thank you so much for coming on again and sharing your story. And, I mean, if this inspires just one person, to get back in shape after they've had a kid or just realizing that, I mean, that's one misconception that I've dealt with too, especially with the bodybuilding community, is that people don't think that, they can never have kids. People think just because of, all that hard work and how they're so devoted to their lives. But, this proves, you can have a kid and still be a competitive bodybuilder. And I've had a lot of people, or they think that, you have kids first and then you can only compete after you've had, all of your kids, which is another thing.
Yeah.
But, you're a shining example of, you can get right back into the shape of things. And, we're going to end things now and you're going to embarrass us. Can you give us a front double bicep? And we're going to say you're 5 months postpart. 5 months postpart. Oh my God. This is just okay. We just lost about, all of our viewers right there. Cause that's just absolutely ridiculous. So I can't think of a better way to wrap things up. So again, Shannon, thank you so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.